Welcome to the World Football Summit podcast, the show for football industry leaders who want to stay ahead of the game. We bring you the latest insights, trends, and stories from the experts driving innovation and progress in sports business worldwide. Join us as we dive deep into the ideas and initiatives transforming the world of football. From sustainability and innovation to player development, fan engagement, and everything in between. Our goal is to unite the global football industry and drive positive change and progress. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the World Football Summit podcast. I'm your host, Jaime, CMO at World Football Summit. Today, Tony Mamodaly, Head of International Operations at TSG Hoffenheim, is our guest on the show. Now, I've been looking forward to this conversation with Tony since he spoke at WFS Africa last year. Tony and I will discuss how TSG Hoffenheim approaches its international strategy and what makes it unique. We talk about different levers of their strategy: partnerships, the academy, technology, trends, and key success factors. We also discuss about leadership and career advice for upcoming industry professionals. And given the nature of his role, Tony has developed a powerful network of international sports industry leaders. I ask him about who he learns most from. To get ready for my conversation, though, let me grab my cup of Juan Valdez, which is a 100% premium Colombian coffee, and settle down. Now, I have to tell you guys, I am very picky when it comes to coffee. And I must say, Juan Valdez definitely hits the bar. But this cup of coffee is much more than that. It is a premium blend developed by female coffee makers, and Juan Valdez has this program in which they look to empower these women both economically and socially. And this resonates very much with the Female Leadership in Football initiative we launched at World Football Summit a few months back. So I'm super excited to partner with them to offer this premium blend to you. You can order it online at es.juanvaldez.com. Again, that's es.juanvaldez.com. And they actually have a special discount for World Football Summit podcast listeners. All you need to do is enter the code WFS at checkout. Again, that's the code WFS at checkout. And they deliver to all markets in Europe. So give it a try and let me know what you think. Finally, don't forget to subscribe and rate the podcast on your platform of choice and share it with your industry colleagues. You can also subscribe to our weekly newsletter, where we share updates, trends, and everything that goes on at our events. You can find the link in the show notes. And now, enjoy this conversation with Tony Mamodaly from TSG Hoffenheim. Well, Tony, welcome to the World Football Summit podcast. I've been looking forward to having this conversation ever since we met at World Football Summit Africa. And I think I'm pretty sure the wait is going to be well worth it. So yeah, welcome.
Thank you very much, Jaime. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be here today.
Tony, I was wondering, before we jump into the conversation, I was wondering if you could share with our audience, a brief introduction about yourself and I guess more importantly, why is it that you do what you do?
Yep. Thank you. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here on this podcast. My name is Tony Mamodaly, 33 years old. I'm the head of international operations here at TSG Hoffenheim, born and raised in Germany as the son of a German mother and father from Madagascar, South Africa. My dad really moved to Montpellier, France at the age of 18 to pursue a professional career in football. My mom, a volleyball player. So you see, I grew up in an environment where sports was quite literally a way of life. I played both football and handball at the same time growing up. And by the time I turned 16, I was at both the academy of TSG Hoffenheim and the Rhein-Neckar Löwen, which is a big handball club here in Germany. So really was at two of the best academies in Germany in their respective sports. By the time of 17, I turned 17, I made it on the roster of the German youth national team in handball and on the list of the national team in football as well. But since I was passionate and really good at both sports, I really couldn't decide for a long time which way to go. And just as in all facets of life, if you find yourself unable to make a decision, then somebody else is going to do it for you, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And so basically, what happened is that just a few weeks after my final appearances with the national team in handball, I communicated to the national team coach in handball that I had taken the decision to concentrate on a career in football. Um, but what happened is that basically I had taken such a long time to take the decision, um, that in the meantime the academy here in Hoffenheim had made different plans and had decided to let me go at the age of 18. And so with this day, I entered into a, I would say, 3 year odyssey in which I was trying to find my place in the world and really fell out of love with the game. Got my absolute highest lows back then. Really was lacking my identity because, as you can imagine, if you pursue a career for such a long time in anything, and then suddenly you see that being gone, then yeah, you really wonder who you are in this world.
Yeah.
um, Luckily, and more by coincidence than by design, I ended up studying in the US, where I got a scholarship at the University in Miami. Graduated from there in 2015, and I applied for a summer program at Columbia University in New York. And to my own surprise, I got in back then. It was crazy to me because it was literally just 3 years after I had hit rock bottom athletically, personally, really mentally, and I got into one of the best universities in the world. And so I remember, as if it was yesterday, first day standing on that campus in New York City, in the center of the world. I had my eureka moment, so to say.
Okay.
Um, and I told myself, if I can do this, then really anybody else can do this as well. And so I founded an agency to help release academy players find alternative pathways at American colleges and universities. um, and this is really where I would say I found my calling, helping highly talented athletes that find themselves at the crossroads of their careers, find alternative pathways to success. Was a very interesting and enriching time. Gained a lot of valuable experiences. What it means to run a business, what it means to think entrepreneurial, but also what it means to work with young athletes, people, in the first place, and what drives and what concerns them. And so I realized it was the most fulfilling thing in the world to see these young guys grow and growing with them at the same time.
Yep.
And since I wanted to learn more about the industry and also commercial opportunities on the sporting side, I interned, and worked at the Wasserman Miami office, so one of the biggest sports and entertainment
Yep.
agencies in the world. I know I really loved that job, and I loved Miami. But then in 2019, and I would say almost precisely 10 years after leaving the academy in Hoffenheim, not by choice, but I got a call from Hoffenheim CEO and was offered the opportunity to bring in my experience and, more importantly, my attitude and mindset that I had developed in the meantime, to develop the club's international strategy. And as much as I miss Miami today, I would say it was one of the best decisions of my life to come back. And so, not to make it too long, since I believe we still have a few more minutes on the podcast. This is my background, my raison d'être, so to say, my why, because you asked about it. And I'm really excited and grateful for the opportunity to be here today.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny how life ends up connecting the dots for us. At the time when you feel that the world is crumbling down and you cannot see further, then suddenly you start finding your own path, and look at you. You end up as head of international strategy at a top tier German club like TSG Hoffenheim. No, so um, I was wondering, for those of us that don't really understand the role, could you explain very briefly what the role is about? Could you divide it into buckets?
Absolutely. I would say it's a multifaceted role that then evolves primarily around four buckets. I would say strategy, brand building, commercial aspects, but also talent development and identification schemes. So one of the key pillars of my day-to-day operations is really managing the club's international partnership network, which we've dubbed the Common Value Club Alliance. and includes 6 clubs across 4 continents.
Okay, thank you for that. And yeah, I don't know if you can start off the conversation, Tony. What can you tell us about the club's international strategy and kind of like the pillars, really, that drive it?
Yeah, sure. I think for context, I always like to take a step back and actually look at the core of what it actually is. And internationalization basically describes the process, or nothing but the process of an organization expanding its business operations beyond its own domestic markets, with the aim to increase brand value, identify new areas of business, generate revenues from international markets, develop new business models, and ultimately, obviously, as we all know, generate higher revenues. And so, if you look at the prerequisites for a successful internationalization strategy, Christian Seifert, the former CEO of the DFL, he laid it out actually perfectly at the conference 2 years ago when he said, the most important success factors for internationalization in professional football are globally renowned stars, a strong club brand, an exciting league competition, as well as current and historical national and international sporting success. And so, if we are honest with us, here in Hoffenheim, then the truth is that we don't have any globally renowned stars because it's not part of our philosophy. We do not really have an exciting league competition. As you know, Bayern Munich won the league 12 times in a row in the last 12 years. So if you're a 12-year-old kid, you've never seen a different German champion than Bayern Munich. And we haven't won any national or international titles yet. That's important.
Yeah. I was gonna say yet.
So the question really is: so what relevance do we actually possess internationally, right? And so in order to answer that, we have to take an inside view. And so when we look at our brand core, we've always been very concerned about using innovation and to really take responsibility for our role within society, and to ultimately live out a pioneering spirit. So we want to be brave, we want to be ambitious, and we want to think football in a radically new way. And so in 2018 already, we developed a future strategy which really defines everything that we do and how we do it. Basically, our attitude, which says that everything that the clubs do on a strategic level needs to ensure that our development and social added value form a unit. And so, if you take a step further and you look at our USPs, then you see that we've basically developed the benchmark in talent identification in Germany. So to break down the talent word first, we're not only talking about professional players, but we're talking about academy players, we're talking about our women, we're talking about coaches, and also, and most importantly, maybe in this context, we're talking about employees. So if you look at the professional side, we've created a transfer surplus of 176 million euros in the last 10 years, which puts us at the first spot, basically, in the German Bundesliga in the last 10 years, and even number 9 in Europe. So that's definitely something that's interesting, and that's
more than
gives us
it's
some ammunition.
It's impressive
because that know-how is very valuable. Then on the academy side, we've developed more than 110 players into professional players in the last 10 years. They combine to an average of 250 to 340 million euros in market values. And most importantly, and this is something that I found very, very interesting, especially in the context of internationalization, is that we have a transition rate of 23% within our academy. And so that means that 23% of our players turn into professional players, which is especially remarkable if you compare that to the 1 to 3% that we have in average in Germany. And I believe that in the UK, it's even 1% or 1 to 2%. But the way that we look at it is really from an international perspective is how can we increase that percentage rate? Because the truth is also that if you have 23% of our players that go pro, that also means on the flip side that three out of four players are not going pro. And we have a huge responsibility for these young kids and players that come to us at a very young age. Some of them starting with us at the age of 10, and they spend their lives and sacrifice their youth in order to become professional players. And it's not enough for us to answer or to simply wish them good luck at the age of 18 or 19 when they don't have a future with us at the club. So really in the international context, we are looking at schemes and concepts and strategies in order to increase that number and find answers and solutions for the players that don't make it with us directly. And then to jump to the next pillar, which I already addressed on the women's side, which I think is really remarkable, because if you look at the resources that they had in the last 10 years in comparison to the resources that we have on the men's side, we have developed more than 20 players in our academy and our first team into national team players in the last 5 years in Hoffenheim. And then on the coaches side, we even have 20 to 25 coaches that started their careers with us in our academy that are coaching on the sidelines in the first league in Germany or in international football. Guys like Julian Nagelsmann, like Domenico Tedesco, who's the national team coach at the Belgian Federation. Fun fact, in this 2021-2022 season, we had 5 former academy coaches coaching at the sidelines in the Bundesliga at the same time. And then in this context, which I already mentioned before, what's really remarkable is that we've developed more than 25 people in the last 10 years that started their careers with us in the back office as a greenkeeper, as a under 15 analyst, as a scout with the under 15s, under 14s that are really pulling the strings in world football as CEOs, as sporting directors, and other leading roles in football. In addition to the benchmark in talent identification and development, the proof of concept in sustainable club building. I would say third, we're setting benchmarks in science and innovation. For example, we operate our own research facility called the TSG Research Lab, which is a 100% nonprofit subsidiary of the club. Under that umbrella, we conduct large amounts of research projects ranging from psychological, physiological to cognitive performance factors in sports. It's also a testing ground for never before applied technologies and tools in football, such as the football out or the 360-degree helix, which we use to improve our players' cognitive abilities and decision-making processes under pressure. The lab is also home to the so-called SAP Interactive Data Space, which is a futuristic boardroom, which allows us to visualize the massive amounts of data we collect day by day. Speaking of data, since we've been following a clear methodology when it comes to developing talent, we call it an individualized data-based approach to talent development. For more than 10 years, we are in possession of norm data, and we know exactly what a player needs in order to improve. Bottom line is that it allows us to eliminate the guesswork and really provides us with a proven methodology to improve human performance. And then lastly, we've been setting benchmarks in sustainability topics, including, for example, the zero waste arena in Europe, which was made possible through our partnership with the waste management company PreZero, which is our naming rights partner in the stadium. We operate an innovative, sustainable, reusable cup concept in the stadium. We offer a climate ticket for our fans, which links the purchase of a ticket directly to reforestation initiatives. And there are many, many more initiatives centered around sustainability. And so when you look at these 4 USPs, it's quite obvious that our strengths are more on the operational side. And so in the context of internationalization, we said if we can't compete under the given framework, we have to change the framework. And so the result of this is really an approach that focuses on identifying partners in relevant target markets that share a similar mindset, face similar challenges, and also see innovation as a driving force for success.
Wow. Thank you for that super detailed answer, which I really appreciate. And then very, very interesting. You're using sustainability to actually grow internationally. When you speak with clubs, they're looking sometimes, to obviously because it's something that they have to do, but they're not looking upwards. It's just a matter of, internally looking in, and you're saying, no, we're going to use this as a lever to actually grow, right? So this actually ties well with my next question, which is TSG Hoffenheim has established partnerships with other clubs to expand its international footprint, if I'm not mistaken, right? So how does this approach benefit the organization? I don't know if you can share any examples of how these partnerships have created value for you guys.
I would say the most important thing is that we approach all our partnerships with the same holistic model that is based on 4 pillars. We always start with talent, knowledge, brand or CSR and impact initiatives, and fourth is really business. With the idea that if we collaborate together at eye level and collaborate together across these 4 pillars, then we actually have a chance to create new resources, development pathways, business opportunities, and ultimately generate higher revenues together. So it's really not an extractive mindset, but really a giver's mindset. And so if we dive into the talent pillar, which again, talent is defined for us as the professional players, the academy players, women, coaches, but also our employees. We talk about residency programs for our coaches and staff. We talk about workshops. We also talk about the college landscape, where we can find answers and solutions for players that don't make it with us. But we really want to create a platform for our talent to expand the horizons, to develop their language competencies, to really create a platform for intercultural exchanges and the transfer of values. So really, this is the basis that we have as a starting point. And if you operate within a clear framework and within a clear network of partners, you can really identify individual pathways for individual talent based on this approach. And so really the idea is that you have a methodological way to approach talent development within your international network. And so the second pillar really is knowledge, where we talk about exchanging knowledge across all different departments of the partner clubs. It's a basis really for scientific operations, and it's also a starting point for the identification and development of new business models. For instance, the state of product developments, diagnostic tools, data sets, and so on. And then the third pillar really is centered around brand, or where we want to really use that platform to create awareness for developmental issues. We want to use football as a vehicle for social change. We really want to position TSG as a good citizen in the world. And so the framework and platform helps us really to contribute to current societal challenges. And so it's really a starting point for us for the creation of brand awareness with the goal to increase brand value. And then lastly, and that's, I think, the result out of having that coherent approach over those 4 pillars constantly, and really not based on an extractive mindset, but really coming from a giver's perspective, is that we say, if we do that constantly, then we actually have a fair chance of generating income from international markets, because the stories that we create, they are so authentic and so relevant that it actually creates value for all partners within the framework.
That was an awesome answer, because that was, a very clear framework, But what I like most about it, Tony, is what you said there at the end, which is, yeah, this framework is great, but if we're not consistent about it, we're not gonna achieve anything. At the end of the day, it's like football, right? I mean, you can have the tactics in place, but you have to be consistent. At the end of the day, right? But I guess that kind of like begs the question: considering that framework, how do you approach, or yeah, when you seek partners, how do you apply this framework? It's basically my question. When you look for partners.
Yeah. So we've basically developed a decision-making matrix that helps us identify and map out potential partners that help us to develop further as thought leaders regionally and internationally. And so really, to keep it simple, we look at basically two pillars. One is suitability as a partner from a responsibility perspective, namely support of our mission statement. Does it help us from a mindset, image perspective? Does it create multiplier effects? And then the second pillar really is suitability for the development of TSG Hoffenheim in specific target markets. Does it help us increase our reach? Is it interesting from a sporting perspective? And does it help us from a positioning perspective? And so really, the result of this is the so-called Common Value Club Alliance, which we've grown in the past 3 years from basically 3 clubs to 6 clubs with partners in the USA, in Ghana, in Brazil, Portugal, and France. And that alliance runs under the motto 4 continents, 6 clubs, 1 mission. And the mission is not to send a player from A to B, but really to create a holistic development platform that promotes excellence on and off the field while adding value to the people, the planet, and society. And so just to name the partners, we partnered in 2020 with FC Cincinnati out of Major League Soccer. We have Hearts of Oak out of Ghana, one of the biggest clubs in Ghana. Barra Futebol Club in Brazil, Académico de Viseu in Portugal, and the last partner that joined us is ASS Sarcelles in France, which is a commune in the northern suburbs of Paris.
I'm a big fan of 2x2s. And in your particular case, what I really like about it is the focus on excellence. Because as you know, we've launched a rebrand at World Football Summit. And one of our key pillars is that, or one of our key beliefs, is that the industry that we need has to commit to excellence. And that's what I like most about your framework, your commitment to excellence and how you're using that to guide your strategy. So congratulations on that. And I really enjoyed that. I want to understand now, what challenges have you faced when trying to develop the international strategy of the club? Is there any particular one that stands out?
I would say it's 2 things. One is I would say psychological and general nature of human beings is that change is always something that scares people. And the second one is really that the cultures are so different that it sometimes communication or things that you say are just being understood in a completely different manner. And so really number one, when it comes to change, I think it's super important that your internationalization strategy cannot just be a strategy that is on top or added as a side benefit of your club strategy, but it has to be really embedded within everything that you do as an organization and everything that you stand for. And it has to be a top-down approach. There's no way that you can just try to think something up and just try to do something that is not attached to the club strategy overall. And then if that's the case and everybody knows in which direction we're walking or going, then everyone in the organization is happy to join that movement as well. And then secondly, I would say on an intercultural level, it's really when we go back to the basics of sports, is everything that we do is centered around excellence. But it's not excellence that can exist alone. It's excellence in combination with respect and friendship. And so if you have that approach, then it minimizes your chances of walking into awkward situations and failure dramatically. And what's really interesting is that actually respect, excellence, and friendship it's not something that we thought about here or an innovative concept, but it's really the core values of the Olympics.
Yeah, that's actually a great framework to follow, obviously. And in a way, it goes back to actually what you were mentioning before, being open and just really valuing what the other side can bring to the table, right? At the end of the day, and not taking anything for granted. Um, Tony, just to finish off this section, I want to ask you, looking into the future, what are your ambitions? Are there any trends that you're looking out for? I mean, I don't know. Where is the international strategy that you're leading heading?
I think that's a great question, and I like to think in that infinite framework. Not sure if you're familiar with the concept of finite games and infinite games.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, indeed. James Carson. It was further developed by Simon Sinek, and basically, if you look at football on the field, we have a finite game, right? We have fixed rules, we have clear winners, and we have losers. We have a definite endpoint, and the game is being played for the purpose of winning. And I always like to look at our international strategy, but also our club strategy, more of a infinite games perspective, where on the other hand, we have no fixed rules, we have no clear endpoint, and the goal is to keep the game going. And so the focus is really on continuing the play rather than determining a winner. And I think if you look at our strategy and our club's future out of that lens, I think then in combination with our values and our beliefs, and we'll be in there for the long run for sure.
And that was awesome because I've never heard anybody in the industry, really, I was going to say in the podcast, but not in the industry, define it like that. And I love it because you're looking at the game as a finite game or a tournament.
The truth is that we can always say we are first in this and that space, but the truth is that if it's not a result on the field, then who defined the rules off the field?
Exactly.
And so actually, we cannot be first in innovation because innovation can be defined as something completely different in a completely different context. And so that's why I like that approach. Obviously, that has to be combined with the clear vision of where you want to be, and more importantly, of who you are and what you can contribute. Actually, that more than actually trying to get more and more and more and more.
Yeah, no, and I want to thank you because I knew about the framework, but I've never thought about it like that, one hand, and second, applied to football, and it's just kind of like an eye opener for me now with that. So thank you. Tony, I don't know if you have any particular advice for those people that are aspiring to work in sports that you want to share.
Would probably say it's a good idea to focus on 3 P's: patience, passion, and perseverance. I think if you do that, then you will find a way. And always look at it from maybe the 4th P is the purpose, actually. Because if you have a purpose and you're not concerned about the industry from a monetary perspective, then I think you will find a way in the spot where you're able to add value to the system.
Tony, this is not fair. You're giving me a lot of nuggets. And I want to thank you. I think that's a great way to actually summarize it, because as you were saying them, I was just thinking, and I'm writing them down. No, and I'm thinking that's true. Oh, that's also true. Oh yeah, that persevere. Of course, you have to persevere, and of course, you need passion, right? So, thank you for that. And I guess well, you participated in the Green Sports Alliance Summit in Seattle, and I think you had the opportunity to actually network and to meet some other amazing leaders of the sports industry in the field of, I think it was sustainability and all of that, right? So, um, I don't know if you noticed any common patterns that these people have, anything you learned from them.
Absolutely. That was a brilliant experience, and Stefan Wagner, my colleague, is one of the yeah um, most forward-thinking people in terms of sustainability in Germany. Um, and he had a panel at the Green Sports Alliance Summit, and we got to network with a lot of high-profile people from the NFL, from the NBA, from the NHL, MLS, and all the major leagues. And one thing was really that stuck to me was that we don't need to hide from them. In contrary, it's that we are really being considered as one of the most innovative clubs, and also when it comes to sustainability. Um, and then two, it's really it's not a race, and again, infinite game theory. Um, it's not a competition, and that's what I think it's brilliant about the sustainability community, is that they understand that we are all in this together, and we can only advance if we share what we know, and if we share our knowledge and our goals with each other, because that's the only way that we can advance. Um, and then lastly, um, I would say it's really sustainability starts with oneself. Um, so if you are a coherent person, um, by coherent, I mean you're somebody that is respectful with your fellow citizenships, respectful with your environment, um, then you're automatically respectful with nature as well. Um, and if you are coherent as a person, you can actually enter into coherent relationships. But if you're not coherent, you can't. So if you have two people, one is coherent, one is not coherent, they bounce off each other. But if you have two coherent people, they can actually form a unit and become stronger together. And that's what you're seeing in the um, the sustainability community, is that they really form a unit and they have a common cause. Um, and since they together are all coherent, they form coherent systems, and that coherent system becomes so loud that actually people want to join that movement because they believe in the cause and in what they believe. And so I think that's a very, very valuable and interesting learning experience to see how different they approach the game. And it's funny, as everything in life is really centered around human beings, and it starts with oneself. And if you're open-minded and if you're coherent, then there is no way that you cannot think about sustainability, because otherwise a few years from now we're all not going to be here anymore if we continue living the way that we currently.
I couldn't agree more. I was actually CMO at a startup before this role at World Football Summit. It was called Trinoa, and it was related to sustainability, reforestation, and all of that, right? And that was kind of like the approach we had. First of all, this is not a competition. This is a team sport, and I think all of us have to really pitch in. And second, you just had a brilliant point there. Everything starts with us, and it's not until that we adopt certain habits that we're going to be able to actually go out there and then convince others to follow along, right? So and to inspire. Thank you for that, Tony.
Appreciate it.
And in general, are there any sports properties? Doesn't have to be football, just sports. That you're using as a benchmark to learn from?
That's a brilliant question, actually, because the challenges we're facing here are so unique. I mean, considering that we are in a village competing with big city clubs, we don't have one specific property we look at, but we constantly try to look at other sports properties in football, but really sometimes also really leaving the traditional fields behind completely. So, for instance, we are currently working with Stanford University with their men's soccer program, To contextualize, they won the national championship in 2015, 2016, 2017, without conceding a single goal, which is remarkable in itself. But it's even more remarkable considering that Stanford has some of the toughest admission requirements in the world, and you can't really get into that school if you aren't a straight A student and haven't shown some extraordinary extracurricular activities on the side. And so they really built this incredible culture of excellence, right? And so we wanted to know how they're doing it, because basically that leaves you with three opportunities or three options. One, they somehow found a way, a remarkable way to identify and scout incredible players that possess outstanding grades at the same time. And if that's the case, we want to know how they do it. B, or two, their head coach is an incredible coach who's capable of developing average players into outstanding players, which is able to win championships. And I'm sure he is. Jeremy Gunn is a fantastic coach, as a side note. Or third, the players share some exceptional mental aspects that are so unique that basically every player would run through a wall in order to win. And so when we first talked to Jeremy, he said, he always asks his players when they join Stanford why they want to be there. And so the typical answer that you would expect from a 17 or 18-year-old college student would be something like, yeah, I want to come here to graduate from one of the best universities in the world, or I don't know what. But he says that the players that go there, they tell them, yeah, I want to come here because at one point I want to fly to the moon with NASA. Or I come here because at one point I want to find a vaccine for HIV. So basically, he tells us that the players have ridiculously high goals, but that is paired with the mentality and with the mindset and the understanding that in order to achieve that goal, they really have to hit plenty of mean goals, so to say. And they really don't care what it takes to eventually get to that ultimate goal that they have set in their minds. And so we are basically running our psychological diagnostic tools through their team, and in the same time, basically coaching them how we use that methodology in order to coach our players. And so that's a remarkable learning experience looking at these players. And so that's really not a traditional approach, I would say, from a professional club to approach a college team. But if you just look at what they've created in the last years, and I think they send 3 or 4 players to the professional game when they graduate. The other part goes on and works on their startups in Silicon Valley, or goes on to Wall Street. So this is really excellence in a different field, but it's really, really valuable for us as an organization to learn from them. And then secondly, and it's probably that's a little bit of a fan moment here, maybe, but we follow closely Right to Dream. Tom Vernon has built an exceptional approach to, and I would even say revolutionize how we develop talent. And so really, for everyone that doesn't know Right to Dream, it's really the first or the leader in purpose-driven academies that has proven that you can do good and do well at the same time. They really have 2 pathways. It's either you become a professional player, or if you don't make it at the end of at the end of your educational pathway, then there is the route to world-class universities and colleges. And I think if you look at the amount of players that they've graduated, they have more than 40 players or 50 players that are now playing in really world football. Mohamed Kudus, the last graduate that just transferred, I think, for 45 million out of West Ham out of Ajax Amsterdam to West Ham, but at the same time they have the same amount of players that are at the moment at Ivy League universities, and so that is really for me an incredible organization where a lot of other organizations in world football can learn from.
That was awesome, Tony, because it goes back to what we were mentioning before, the excellence piece of it, your commitment to excellence. And once you have that commitment, you open your eyes to wherever you find excellence. Because usually, that was a unique answer, as you said, because a lot of the people that I ask this question, they go to the top tier clubs in the world. So, for example, I don't know, in football, City Football Group, whoever, or the NBA or whatever, right? But in your case, you said, no, let's flip this around. If we're committed to excellence, where do we find excellence? And I want to thank you for that. And yeah, I couldn't thought of better examples. In fact, Red Stream was with us at one of our events. They were speaking about purpose. So, I truly subscribe to that framework. So thank you for that great answer, Tony.
You're welcome. Yeah, I was actually had the chance to visit White to Dream last year in Ghana myself, and it's an incredible organization. They, I think if you just walk through the main door of the building, they have this quote on the wall where it says, "If everything goes wrong, then this is who we are." And I think that is so powerful because that basically puts your purpose at such a high level that you say, hey, worst case, and it's actually true that they don't release any player. So they basically, any player they bring in from the age of 10 or older gets to graduate the program at the age of 18 when they finish high school. And then the next step is really moving into the professional game or entering into an Ivy League institution. And so that is really remarkable. And I think there's a lot that we can learn from them.
And if you had to define your career in 1-2 words, short sentence, would you be able to do it?
Yeah, I would say fulfilling.
Good one. And Tony, I'm going to ask you a question that feel free to answer it. I think it's part of the topics that we've discussed today. If you were able to define the football industry that you want or the football industry that you need in 1 sentence, 2 sentences, what would you say?
It has to be one that goes back to the core values of the sport, namely excellence in combination with respect and friendship.
Excellence, respect, and friendship. That's an amazing way to end this conversation. And I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
Because I agree. I don't know if there's any other words you want to share with the audience. I don't know if you want to share where people can learn more about you, about the club, the work you're doing at the club.
Sure. That's definitely on either our club's website or on LinkedIn. Always happy to connect with fellow people from the industry.
Amazing. Well, I will send them there. Tony, I want to thank you so much. This has been a masterclass. I've just written so many things down. I knew the conversation was going to be well worth the wait, and I'm happy to see that I was right. And I want to thank you. Hopefully, we'll bring you back in the future. You can tell us all about how the club's evolving, and hopefully we'll meet at some of our events soon.
Thank you very much, Jaime. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have an awesome day, Tony.
Thank you. You too.
And there you have him, Tony Mamodaly from TSG Hoffenheim, in what was an awesome conversation. So many takeaways from this one for me. First, TSG Hoffenheim takes care of its talent across the entire organization. It's part of its culture, and that actually helps keep things together when they face adversity. A couple of additional points regarding their culture. First, their growth mindset. Even if they have already achieved amazing results, they're never satisfied. And also, how important sustainability is for the organization, even playing a key part in their international strategy. His 4-piece framework advice to industry professional: patience, passion, perseverance, and purpose. And how does Tony define the football industry he wants? Go back to the core values: excellence, respect, and friendship. And finally, there were a couple of frameworks that were eye-opening for me. I'm a huge fan of 2x2s, and the one he shares with development of the TSG Hoffenheim brand across markets, positioning, etc., on one axis, and on the other, the responsibility perspective, resulted in their Common Club Alliance. The goal? Create a platform that promotes excellence. Also, it was the first time I saw the finite versus infinite games framework applied to the football industry. There are always new avenues for growth, to evolve, and most of all, to create the football industry we want, the football industry we need. Did anything else stand out to you? Let us know on social media. Don't forget to subscribe and rate the podcast on your platform of choice and share it with your industry colleagues. Oh, and before we go, if you're ever in Madrid and you're looking for a place to network effectively, share a traditional Spanish snack with a modern touch, or simply enjoy a relaxing moment for yourself with a delicious sweet treat to break a day, make sure you visit La Hermosita. You won't miss. I'm not kidding when I tell you, I recently bought my wife a small piece of pie for a special occasion, and she loved it. So again, visit La Hermosita, and when you go there, make sure you tell them you heard about them on the World Football Summit podcast. You can find the link to their website on the notes of the episode. Remember, you can also subscribe to our weekly newsletter. You can find the link in the show notes as well. Finally, I just want to thank you for tuning into this episode of the World Football Summit podcast. We hope you enjoyed it and you learned something new. I'm sure I did. Have a great rest of your day, and we hope to see you next time.